He froze at the doorway, his breath locked in his chest. Inside the tiny apartment, 3 boys ran across the floor, their laughter filling the dimly lit room. It should have been an ordinary scene, children playing, chasing one another in circles. But it wasn't. Each face carried his own. The curve of their smiles, the sharp cut of their eyes, even the small tilt of their heads when they laughed. It was like looking into 3 mirrors of a past he never knew existed. The millionaire CEO who controlled entire empires now stood powerless, gripped by a discovery greater than all the wealth he owned. For years he believed she was only a maid, a shadow in his home, a woman easily overlooked. Yet here was the truth, alive, breathing, undeniable, hidden behind a simple wooden door. 3 sons, 3 secrets, 3 pieces of himself that the world had kept from him. And for the first time in his life, the man who thought he had seen everything was left speechless. Morning arrived in New York City, but it never came the same way for everyone. High above Manhattan, inside a glass penthouse that touched the clouds, a man rose from his bed. His name carried weight in the city. Bankers, investors, and politicians all knew it. To them, he was the perfect image of success, young, powerful, and a millionaire many times over. From the top floor of his tower, he could look down at Central Park, its green trees cut into neat little squares by long, busy streets. The world looked small from where he stood, too small. His life was built on order. His bed sheets were silk, his closet a wall of dark suits lined like soldiers, his mornings timed down to the last second. Breakfast waited on silver trays, fresh juice, imported croissants, eggs folded perfectly, but he barely touched the food. For him, eating was not about hunger. It was about control. He drank black coffee so bitter it could make a child cry. He wanted every sip to remind him he was strong enough to handle anything. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. His assistant had already sent today's schedule, 9 a.m. Private jet to Washington, D.C. for a board meeting. 11 a.m. Call with London investors, 2 p.m. Lunch with the mayor, 7 p.m. Gala dinner at the Met Museum. The man barely blinked at the list. His life had no surprises. Or so he thought. Down on the ground, across the river in Brooklyn, morning came like a storm. In a small apartment with cracked walls and noisy pipes, a young black woman opened her eyes. Her alarm wasn't a clock. It was the sound of 3 boys shifting under one blanket, their small breaths mixing in the cool air. They were her sons, her secret, her whole world. The room was tight, but she had made it a home. School drawings taped to the wall covered the stains. A second-hand rug softened the cold floor. The fridge was nearly empty, but she knew how to stretch every meal. Last night's rice could become breakfast with a fried egg on top. Bananas could be sliced thin to make 3 boys smile. She moved quickly, tying her hair back, pulling on a uniform faded from too many washes. Before she left, she kissed each boy's forehead, whispering, "Be good today. Mama loves you." The city outside was already awake. Sirens screamed in the distance. Car horns fought in the streets. At the bus stop, she joined a line of tired faces, nurses in scrubs, janitors in thick coats, men pushing carts of cans. The wind cut through her jacket, but she held her bag tight and waited. If the bus was late, her supervisor would notice, and if he noticed twice, her job would be gone. The bus arrived, groaning like an old beast. Inside, it smelled of damp clothes and old newspapers. She stood, holding the rail, swaying as it jerked through traffic. Her eyes drifted to the window. Outside, the city moved in pieces. Laundromats, corner stores, bakeries where she could not afford the bread. People rushed with coffee cups in hand, not even looking at her bus. By the time the CEO slid into the back seat of his black limousine, scrolling through numbers on his iPad, She was already scrubbing office floors downtown. He rode in silence, cushioned in leather. She bent over toilets, her hands raw from bleach. He signed million-dollar deals. She counted coins at lunch to make sure there was bus fare for the ride home. 2 lives, same city, but a world apart. The CEO's tower was filled with silence, the kind of silence that money bought but never warmed. He could see everything, but he felt nothing. His eyes scanned the city from above, yet they never saw her bus struggling through traffic, never saw her bending in pain as she worked. And her world? It was noise. The clatter of dishes in a cafeteria where she ate standing up. The slam of doors in buildings she cleaned but could never live in. The shout of supervisors reminding her she was replaceable. Noise and weight, but also love. Because every step she took, every floor she scrubbed, was for the 3 boys who waited at home. At lunch, the CEO sat across from the mayor of New York at a table inside a private restaurant overlooking Times Square. Crystal glasses sparkled. Waiters hovered like shadows. Deals were whispered over plates that cost more than her rent. At that same hour, the maid sat on an upturned milk crate beside a mop sink in a building basement. Her sandwich was thin, her apples small, but she ate with quiet dignity. She checked the time, knowing her sons would be in class by now, maybe playing during recess. A soft smile touched her lips. Even in her tiredness, the thought of them gave her strength. Who lived the better life? The man who owned everything but smiled at nothing, or the woman who owned almost nothing but smiled at everything that mattered? What do you think? Who is richer in this moment, the man in the penthouse or the woman in the basement? Drop your answer in the comments. By mid-afternoon, the CEO sat in his office with windows that overlooked the Empire State Building. His phone buzzed non-stop. Assistants ran in and out, carrying papers, whispering updates. He was a king in his castle, untouchable, feared, respected. But inside, he felt a strange emptiness. A life built on power had no place for warmth. The maid, however, was on her knees scrubbing a marble lobby floor on Wall Street. The security guard walked past without a glance. People in suits rushed over her head, barely noticing she existed. Yet as she worked, she hummed softly under her breath, a lullaby she used to sing to her boys. Her back ached, but her heart was steady. She knew why she fought each day. Evening came. The CEO slipped into his tuxedo, preparing for a gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The chandelier light glowed golden. Cameras flashed. The world clapped for him. Speeches were made about his brilliance, his empire, his wealth. But no one clapped for the lonely silence that followed him home each night. The maid, on the other hand, boarded the bus back to Brooklyn. The air smelled of sweat and tired feet. She leaned against the window, her eyes heavy. But the moment she stepped into her small apartment, everything changed. 3 little boys rushed into her arms, their laughter shaking the walls, their love louder than any speech. She didn't need a chandelier. Her children's eyes were her light. But deep inside, a secret lived, a truth bigger than both their worlds, because those 3 boys carried more than her smile. They carried his face, too. The millionaire CEO, with all his towers and riches, had no idea that across the river, in a small Brooklyn apartment, lived 3 sons who could shatter everything he thought he knew. And sooner or later, he was going to find out. If you were the maid, would you tell him the truth or keep it hidden forever? Comment your answer below. And don't forget to subscribe, because what comes next will leave you speechless. The CEO was a man who noticed everything. Or so he believed. In his world, details made money, and money made power. He had built an empire in New York City, one handshake, one contract, one ruthless decision at a time. Yet, for all his sharpness, there was one detail he had overlooked for far too long: the quiet maid who moved through his penthouse like a shadow. She came early, left late, and never caused trouble. She worked with her head down, her steps soft, her hands quick. To most men of his status, she was invisible, just another worker in a city that ran on invisible people. But one morning, something small caught his attention, something so ordinary it should not have mattered at all. He had offered her extra pay, a bonus for the week, nothing huge to him, but enough to change her month. Any other maid would have thanked him eagerly. But she shook her head. "No, sir," she whispered, eyes low. "I can't accept." She didn't even look at him. The CEO froze. Who turns down free money in New York City? Money was power, survival, life. He watched her retreat, her shoulders tense, her face unreadable. And that was when a question began to burn in his mind. What is she hiding? The more he paid attention, the more odd things he noticed. She never spoke unless spoken to. She avoided his gaze as if meeting his eyes was dangerous. She finished her work quickly, but the moment her shift ended, she vanished. No lingering, no chatter with the other staff, no smile. It was as if she lived two lives, one inside his walls and one outside them. Twice, he caught her refusing extra shifts. Twice, he overheard her saying softly to another maid, "I can't stay, I have to go home." Home. The word echoed in his ears. Where did she rush to every evening? Why did she never mention family, friends, or even a pet? Why did she guard her life so closely? And why did her face sometimes carry a flicker of pain when she thought no one was watching? The CEO prided himself on control. He hated mysteries. He hated not knowing. And most of all, he hated the idea that someone in his world could keep a secret from him. That bruised his ego. One late afternoon, he lingered in his office longer than usual. Through the crack of his door, he saw her collecting her things. She thought no one was looking. He watched her tie her hair back, slip on a coat, and clutch her bag tightly to her chest, as if it carried more than just cleaning supplies. Her movements were careful, almost nervous. She left quickly, not waiting for the elevator with the others. Instead, she took the service stairs, her steps fast and light. The CEO frowned. Why rush away so anxiously? Why avoid the main doors? He felt something stir inside him, a mix of curiosity, suspicion, and an almost childlike need to uncover the truth. For a man who ruled boardrooms, who crushed rivals with a smile, it seemed absurd. But the mystery of his maid gnawed at him more than billion-dollar deals. He couldn't let it go. That evening, when his chauffeur pulled the car around, the CEO held up his hand. "Not tonight," he said. "I'll walk." The driver blinked in surprise. The CEO never walked, but tonight was different. Tonight, he had a new target. He slipped out of the building and followed her at a distance. The crowded streets of Manhattan shielded him. She didn't notice the tall man in a dark coat weaving behind her, eyes locked on every step she took. She walked quickly, avoiding bright lights, turning corners sharply. It was not the walk of a woman wandering home. It was the walk of someone guarding a secret. His heart beat faster than he cared to admit. This wasn't business anymore. This was personal. She boarded a bus on Madison Avenue, her bag clutched tightly against her chest. He followed, slipping into a seat at the back, keeping his face hidden behind a newspaper. The bus smelled of old leather and tired bodies. A woman with groceries sat beside him, humming softly. Children laughed at the back, tossing candy wrappers at each other. The CEO ignored it all. His eyes stayed fixed on her. She stared out the window, her face calm but her grip on the bag unrelenting. The city blurred past, Harlem, then across the bridge toward Brooklyn. The CEO's world of glass towers and private drivers felt far away now, and maybe for the first time in years, he felt small. The bus rattled into a rougher part of Brooklyn. Buildings leaned tiredly against each other. Corner stores with flickering signs sold dollar pizzas. Walls were scribbled with graffiti. Kids played basketball on cracked courts, their laughter echoing into the night. She rang the bell and stepped off. He followed. Her pace quickened, her head turning once as if sensing eyes behind her. He froze in the shadows of a lamppost, waiting until she turned away again. Block after block, she walked with purpose. Finally, she stopped before a small, worn apartment building. Its paint peeled, its windows dim, but a faint glow leaked through the cracks of one curtain. She glanced around nervously, then unlocked the door. The CEO's breath caught. This was it. This was her world. And he was about to see what she had been hiding all this time. He crept closer, his polished shoes silent on the cracked sidewalk. Through the thin walls, he thought he heard movement. Laughter, soft and high-pitched like children. He froze. Children? Why would a maid who lived so quietly be hiding children? His chest tightened. Something inside him told him this was bigger than he imagined. He stepped closer, peering through the faint gap in the curtain. The room lit up in golden warmth, nothing like the cold glass of his penthouse. The air was alive with motion. Small shadows moved quickly across the floor. His eyes widened, and in that moment, everything he thought he knew about his life began to collapse. What do you think the CEO is about to see inside that room? Is it her children? A secret lover? Or something even more shocking? Comment below with your guess. And don't leave yet. The truth will leave you speechless. The CEO pressed his back against the rough brick wall of the apartment building, his breath low and steady. For years, he had lived in towers of glass where nothing touched him but air conditioning and polished marble. Now he stood on a cracked sidewalk in Brooklyn, close enough to smell the faint odor of fried food from the corner store, close enough to hear the rattling pipes of the old building. The night air wrapped around him, heavy with the hum of distant traffic. A dog barked somewhere down the street. A siren wailed faintly over on Atlantic Avenue, fading into silence. This wasn't his world, but tonight he had stepped into it. Through the thin curtain of her apartment window, a golden light spilled into the dark street. He leaned closer, careful not to make a sound. His eyes searched, hungry for the truth. And then he saw them. A pair of tiny shoes, scuffed sneakers placed neatly by the door. Next to them, another pair, and another. 3 pairs in total, all lined in a row. His stomach tightened. He had expected... What? Maybe a secret boyfriend, maybe stolen goods, maybe nothing at all. But not this. 3 pairs of children's shoes. His eyes darted around the room. On the wall, taped carefully with worn-out blue tape, hung drawings. Crayon pictures on wrinkled paper. He squinted through the glass. The drawings showed a man, tall, broad shoulders, dark suit, sharp jaw. And across every page, in the uneven handwriting of a child, was one word. Daddy. The CEO's breath caught in his throat. He blinked, leaned closer as if his mind was tricking him. Could it be a coincidence? Children drew fathers all the time, but the faces, the jawline, the sharp nose, it looked too familiar. It looked like him. He staggered back a step, shaking his head. No, he whispered to himself, though no one could hear. No, it can't be. Inside, he saw shadows move. 3 small figures darting across the floor, chasing each other with squeals of laughter. Their voices reached him even through the thin walls. Light, high-pitched, full of life. His chest tightened. 3 children. For the first time in years, the CEO felt unsure. He had conquered boardrooms, silenced rivals, crushed enemies with contracts and signatures. But now, standing outside this humble Brooklyn apartment, he felt powerless. Who were those children? Why did their drawings call him Daddy? And why had she, The quiet maid, the woman who had scrubbed his floors for years, hidden them from him. He pressed closer to the window. The room was small but alive. Toys were scattered on the rug. Plastic cars, building blocks, a stuffed bear with one ear missing. The kind of mess that spoke of joy, not neglect. The maid moved gracefully among them, her uniform still clinging to her from the long day, her hair pulled back, her face glowing with exhaustion and love. She laughed softly as one of the boys tugged her sleeve. She knelt, wiping his cheek with her thumb, her smile wide and warm. For a moment, the CEO forgot to breathe. He had never seen her smile before. In his penthouse, she was silent, hidden, invisible. But here, in her own world, she was alive, her face radiant, her laughter unguarded. And the boys. They ran to her, clinging to her arms, shouting over one another, their voices tumbling like a waterfall. "Mommy, look what I made! Mommy, can you help me? Mommy, watch me!" The word mommy echoed in his ears, a word he had never heard in his cold, empty penthouse. Then his eyes froze again. One of the boys turned toward the light. The CEO's heart stopped. The child's face, round, innocent, but with sharp eyes that pierced like glass, looked exactly like him. Not a little, not almost, exactly. He stumbled back, his knees weak. It was like staring into a mirror from years ago, a mirror that showed him as a child he didn't remember being. The same eyes, the same hair, the same stubborn jaw. His chest burned. He rubbed his face with both hands, shaking his head. It couldn't be true. It shouldn't be true. But deep down, something told him it was. And then came the second boy. He looked the same. And the third, triplets. 3 little copies of himself, playing on a rug in a Brooklyn apartment he never knew existed. His pulse raced, hot and furious. His pride screamed at him. If these boys were his, if they truly carried his blood, why hadn't she told him? Why had she hidden them? Why had she scrubbed his floors every day with lowered eyes, as if he were a stranger, while raising his sons in secret? His fists clenched. His ego boiled. But beneath the anger was something else, a fear, a hollow in his chest he could not name. He stepped closer again, unable to pull himself away. The scene unfolded like a movie he could not stop watching. The maid gathered the boys, sitting them at the small kitchen table. She served them bowls of steaming soup. Their little heads bent over the table, their chatter filling the room. On the fridge behind them, more drawings were taped up. He forced his eyes to focus, and what he saw nearly brought him to his knees. Crayon portraits, 3 children holding hands with a tall man in a suit. Beside them, a woman with long hair. A family. Above the picture, written in shaky letters, were the words, "Me, Mommy, Daddy." The CEO's hand pressed hard against the window frame. He felt the ground shift beneath him. Could it be true? Were these boys his sons? But then a darker thought struck him. What if they weren't? What if the word daddy didn't mean him at all? What if she had found someone else, a man who stepped in where he had walked away? His pride burned hotter. The idea of her giving his place, his role, his name to another man twisted inside him like a knife. And yet, the boys looked so much like him. Too much. The question clawed at him. Are they mine? Or did she replace me? He stepped back into the shadows, his mind spinning. This secret could destroy him, or save him. His empire had been built on numbers and steel, on buildings and contracts. But none of it prepared him for this, the possibility that 3 small boys in a Brooklyn apartment carried his blood. He looked up at the window one last time. The maid leaned close to the children, her face tired but full of love. The boys laughed, their voices carrying into the night. He wanted to storm inside, demand the truth, shake answers out of her. But something stopped him. A fear he had never known before. because deep down he already knew. The CEO turned slowly, stepping back into the shadows of the street. The night swallowed him, but the questions burned hotter than fire. Who were those boys? Why had she hidden them? And what would happen when he finally confronted her? If you were in his shoes, standing outside that window, staring at children who might carry your face, would you walk away, or would you confront her immediately? Comment below with your choice. And subscribe now, because the truth is about to explode. The hallway was narrow and quiet. A radiator hissed. Water moved somewhere behind the walls. The CEO stood outside the door, the same door he had watched from the window. His hand rested on the frame. His chest lifted and fell like a slow drum. Inside, the small apartment glowed. Warm light, a simple table, a thin rug. 3 little jackets on hooks by the door. 3 small backpacks in a row. A world built for children. He pushed the door open an inch. The sound reached him first, soft feet on the floor, the click of a bowl on the table, the scrape of a chair leg across linoleum. He stepped in one slow pace, then another, until he could see the whole room. They were there. 3 boys stood near the table, faces turned to the light. The shape of their eyes, the line of their jaws, the slight curl at the edge of their hair. They looked like him. Not a little. Not somewhat. Like mirrors. Like past and present standing in one place. His spine loosened. His shoulders fell. The weight of his suit meant nothing. All the steel he wore in boardrooms slipped away. For the first time in years, he had nothing to say and nowhere to hide. The maid saw him. She froze in the middle of the room, one hand on a bowl, the other on a towel. Time paused. The towel stayed half-folded, the bowl tilted. A drop of soup slid down the side and held there, shining in the light. No one spoke. Breath filled the room, slow, sharp, unsteady. The city outside kept moving, sirens, engines, voices, but inside the apartment everything stopped and listened. He took another step. His eyes went from boy to boy, then to her. Then back to them. His mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. The world he knew, glass towers, black cars, numbers on screens, receded like a wave. This was something else. This was real. This was alive. This did not obey him. The first boy stood near the fridge. A drawing was taped behind him. 3 small figures holding hands with a tall man in a suit. The boy's head tilted in the same way the CEO's head tilted in every photo. The second boy leaned by the table. He had the same deep set to the eyes, the same stubborn brow. The third boy stood closest. He stared without fear. His face carried the same calm strength the CEO showed in hard meetings. There was no mistake. There was no way to unsee it. The maid did not move. Her chest rose. Her chest fell. She knew this moment would come one day. She had hoped it would not be today. She had hoped it would be never. But here it was, standing in her doorway in a dark coat and a heavy silence. The room spoke with small noises. A spoon tapped the table. A clock on the wall clicked. The radiator hissed and then went quiet, as if it too ran out of words. He stepped closer. His hand reached for the back of a chair, and he held it to steady himself. His fingers shook. All his practiced calm went soft. The boys watched him, not afraid, only curious. They knew nothing of boardrooms or lawsuits or public faces. They knew a table, a rug, a small window that showed a piece of the sky. They knew bedtime stories and early buses and warm hands that made everything better. They knew this room. They knew the woman at the center of it. And now, they knew the man who looked like them. The maid's eyes held his. No anger, no panic, only a deep, careful strength. The kind built in long lines, day after day, year after year. The kind you get when you work while tired, love while hurting, and stand up when no one claps. A fork slipped from the edge of the table and touched the floor. Soft, clean, final. The sound broke the stillness without breaking the moment. He lowered himself into the chair as if his legs did not trust him. His throat tightened. His chest pulled inward. He could not call a driver. He could not order anyone to fix this. There was nothing to fix. There was only truth. The boys shifted closer in small steps. One boy reached for a toy car on the rug and rolled it once, slow, as if testing the world. Another boy traced a finger over a crayon line on his picture, like he was checking it was still there. The third boy stood still, eyes steady, like he had been waiting for this without knowing how to say it. All the power in the city meant nothing here. Money did not speak this language, only breath did, only eyes, only the quiet that carries answers bigger than words. The maid set the towel down. The towel made a small fold on the counter. Her hands met in front of her, fingers laced, her shoulders squared. She did not look away. He looked at the wall again. "Daddy," written in uneven letters above 3 stick figures. The word glowed without light. It filled the room without sound. His confidence folded like paper. Pride slipped off him like a coat. He felt small. He felt human. He felt everything he kept locked under steel and glass. He tried to speak. His mouth opened. Air moved. No sound. His breath caught. He looked at the boys again, one by one, and the truth hit him a second time, harder, deeper, final. They were his. He remembered nothing, but their faces remembered him. It was in the bone. It was in the eyes. It was in the way the smallest one stood, feet set, chin lifted a little, ready to face a room. It was in the way the tallest one looked aside when thinking, the same way the CEO did when he planned his next move. It was in the way the middle one held a worry in the brow and hid it with a tiny smile. 3 pieces of one story. The maid took one step toward the table. The boys slid into their chairs, a practiced motion, gentle, respectful. She lifted the bowl that had tilted and set it straight. She wiped the drop that had held the light. She made the small things right, the way she had learned to do in places that only noticed when something was wrong. He watched her make the room steady again. He realized she had been doing this for years. Alone, quiet, strong. His hands pressed together. His thumbs shook. His lungs pulled in air slowly and let it go like someone learning a new skill. The room waited with him. He looked around for anchors, the jackets on the hooks, the backpacks, names written on tags with a black marker. Each name began with the same letter, 3 names, 3 sons, a set that could not be broken. A memory flickered. Not a picture, a feeling, a hallway, a night like this, a choice made too fast, too proud, too sure. He did not see the scene. He felt it. He felt the echo of a door closing long ago and the long road that followed. He felt what pride costs when it wins. He set his hands flat on the table. He could feel the grain of the wood. It was not perfect. It was real. It held scratches from crayons and tiny dents from toy wheels. It told a story in marks. No one moved for a long moment. The boys ate a few spoonfuls in quiet bites. The smallest coughed once, then smiled as if to say he was fine. The city kept humming outside, steady, uncaring, wide. The maid reached for the fridge and opened it. Light pooled over a row of small drawings held by weak magnets. He saw more of the same man in a suit. Sometimes the man held hands with all 3 boys. Sometimes he stood near a tall building that looked like a box of windows. Sometimes he wore a tie the boys colored green. Sometimes his face was just a circle with 2 eyes and a line, but even then, the line felt like his line. The CEO's throat warmed. A tear pushed near the surface, then hid. He was not ready to let it fall. Not yet. He had learned to win by holding everything in place. But life does not only rise, it opens. The smallest boy slid a toy toward the edge of the rug. The car bumped the CEO's shoe and rested there, waiting. The man looked at it. A little blue car with a missing sticker. The kind of toy that costs little and lives forever in small hands. He touched it with one finger, barely, like it might break or burn. He heard himself breathe. He looked up and met the maid's eyes again. In that look there were miles, days of buses, nights of worry, early mornings with cold floors and warm hopes, lines of work that never ended, choices that did not feel like choices, a fierce, simple love that fed 3 boys whether the world clapped or not. She held his stare and did not blink. He nodded once, slow, honest, the nod of a man who had run out of tricks and found something better. The middle boy leaned forward and lifted a paper from the table. A drawing. He turned it toward his mother. She smiled with her eyes. The boy set the paper back down, then slid it a little closer to the edge, a little toward the man at the table. An invitation without words. A bridge without railings. The CEO's fingers moved again. He touched the corner of the paper. He did not lift it. He only felt the rough edge and the softness of the wax where the crayon had pressed hard. 3 small breaths reached him. 3 little hearts he could not hear, but could feel. The room was full and quiet at the same time. It felt like the inside of a decision. His confident mask did not return. It could not live in this air. In this room, only truth could stand, and truth did not need to be loud. It only needed to be seen. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Meetings, numbers, the endless wheel. He did not reach for it. The sound died inside the fabric and went nowhere. For once, the world could wait. The maid moved to the sink. She rinsed a spoon. She set it to dry. Small acts. Steady rhythm. The drumbeat of a life that keeps going. She turned back. The boys kept watching the man who looked like them, not with fear, with quiet study, like they were reading a book without words. Outside, a police car rolled by. Blue light brushed the curtains and left. Boots clicked in the stairwell. A neighbor laughed 2 doors down. A baby cried somewhere above, then fell back to sleep. The building breathed. The CEO took in the room one more time. He felt the rug under his shoes. He smelled soup and soap and pencil shavings. He heard a clock tick up on the wall. He saw 3 faces that did not need to ask a question because they already knew the answer. His world had split open, but not in the way he feared. There was no fall. There was a path. Narrow, scary, real. He drew a breath deeper than any he had taken all day. His shoulders dropped another inch, his hands unclenched, his jaw softened, his eyes warmed by a degree he could feel. The change was small to anyone else. To him, it was a door. The maid set one more bowl on the table, 4 places now, not 3. The shape of the room shifted. The air held a new pattern. The moment hung there, fragile, full, waiting. No one reached for a word. Words would come later. Truth stood there now, steady on its own feet. A car horn blared outside. The smallest boy flinched, then grinned, then touched the toy car again with one finger. The middle boy breathed out and rested his chin on his fist. The oldest looked at the man and tilted his head in perfect echo. The CEO closed his eyes for a second and opened them again. He did not need to be brave. He only needed to stay. If your whole life changed in one silent minute, what would you do next? Sit, leave, or step fully in? Tell me in the comments. And if you believe this truth deserves to be seen to the end, subscribe now. The next choice will decide everything. The CEO's chest burned. He could not stay silent any longer. His voice cut through the small room, sharp but trembling. "Why didn't you tell me?" The words came rough, breaking between anger and disbelief. His usual polished tone was gone. He sounded less like a man in control and more like a man cornered by ghosts. The maid froze, her hand still on the counter. Her back stiffened, but she did not flinch. Slowly she turned. Her eyes met his. They were steady, deep, unbroken. "You left," she said quietly. Her voice was soft, but each word carried weight. "Long ago. You chose your world, and I chose to protect mine." The CEO shook his head, his pride fighting the guilt swelling inside him. "Protect them? Protect them from me? They're mine." His hand pointed toward the boys, his face red with confusion, betrayal, and a fear he would never admit. Her jaw tightened. "I protected them from your pride, from your cold walls, from becoming shadows in a world where love does not live." The boys sat still, wide-eyed, watching. The air in the room felt heavy, like even the walls were listening. He stepped closer, his voice cracking. "I would have given them everything, money, schools, the best of everything." Her eyes narrowed. "Children don't grow on money, they grow on love. And you didn't have any left to give me." The words landed like blows. His shoulders slumped. His mouth opened, but no defense came. For years he thought power was strength. But in this room, strength was a mother who had raised 3 boys alone, while he lived blind above the city. Tears stung at his eyes, though pride forced him to blink them back. He looked at her, then at the boys, then at her again. "So you chose silence." "I chose them," she said firmly. "Always them." The room trembled with the unspoken. Love once shared, a bond once broken, a family scattered by pride and pain. And now, standing in the same room, the truth pressed down on everyone. Who is right here? The CEO who feels betrayed, or the mother who chose silence? Comment below. The room was quiet, but the silence wasn't empty. It was heavy, thick, alive with things no one dared to say. The CEO sat hunched at the small wooden table. The same man who once ruled Manhattan boardrooms like a king. But here, in this Brooklyn apartment, he looked nothing like the master of skyscrapers. His suit wrinkled, his shoulders sagged, his hands trembled as they gripped the edge of the chair. He had been in countless negotiations, battles for billions of dollars, arguments that decided the fate of entire companies. Yet never once had he felt this powerless. Across from him, the maid stood tall. She didn't need silk or steel. She didn't need a boardroom to command respect. She had her sons, her truth, and the unshakable strength of a woman who had survived storms no one else had seen. This was no longer a meeting of boss and servant. This was judgment. The boys shifted in their seats, their small eyes darting between the 2 adults. They didn't understand the depth of the silence, but they felt it. Children always feel when something big is happening, even if they don't know what it is. The CEO finally lifted his head. His eyes were red, his face pale, his voice cracked. "Do they know?" The maid's lips pressed together. She shook her head slowly. "They know, love," she said. "That's all they need." The words hit him harder than any lawsuit, harder than any public scandal. His sons, if they were truly his, didn't know his name. They didn't know his face. They didn't need his money. All they knew was her love, and it was enough. His chest tightened with a pain he couldn't hide. "You should have told me," he whispered. Her eyes sharpened. "Told you? So you could do what? Put them in a penthouse and leave them alone with strangers? Give them gold spoons but no arms to hold them?" "No." She shook her head firmly. "I chose silence because silence was safer than your pride." The CEO's mouth opened, but nothing came out. His defenses, his arguments, all the weapons that had won him wars in the business world, were useless here. He wanted to shout, to demand, to say, "They are mine." But the words stuck, because deep down he knew being a father wasn't about possession, it was about presence, and he had not been there. Not once. The maid stepped closer, her eyes steady, her voice steady. While you were flying private jets, I was walking to bus stops in the rain. While you were dining with mayors, I was stretching a single loaf of bread into 4 meals. While you were shaking hands with presidents, I was holding 3 small hands through the night when they cried from hunger or fever. You left me with silence, so I raised them in silence. The CEO swallowed hard, shame burning his chest. Every word was a dagger. Every truth stripped him further. The boys looked at their mother with wide, innocent eyes. They didn't understand the full weight of her words, but they understood her strength. They always had. The CEO's head dropped into his hands. His breath came sharp, broken. I would have given them everything, he muttered. The maid's voice rose, not loud, but strong. Children don't grow on money. They grow on love. Those words filled the room like thunder. In Manhattan, people feared the CEO because of his power. In Brooklyn, he now feared a woman who had nothing but truth. The moral tables had turned. He, the man who once towered above the city, was now small. She, the woman once ignored in his penthouse, was now tall, and everyone in the room could feel it. He looked up again, tears brimming in his eyes. His voice shook. Can I be part of their lives now? The maid's eyes narrowed. For a moment, silence stretched again, long and sharp. Then she spoke. You don't get to walk in and out when it suits you. You don't get to claim them because you finally feel guilty. You left. I stayed. I built this life. They are not a prize to win back. They are my sons. Her words were fire. Not the fire of anger, but the fire of truth that burns lies to ash. The CEO's lips trembled, his jaw clenched. He wanted to argue, but deep down he knew she was right. He lowered his head. His voice cracked again. Then what am I? Nothing? The maid's eyes softened, but only slightly. You are a man with choices. You can walk away like you did before. Or you can stay and prove with your actions, not your money, not your words, that you deserve to be here. The challenge hung in the air, heavy, unavoidable. The CEO stared at the boys again. One was fiddling with his toy car. Another was drawing quietly, crayons scratching against paper. The third was simply staring at him, head tilted, eyes sharp. They didn't see a millionaire. They didn't see a failure. They saw a man who looked like them. And in that silent recognition, his chest cracked wide open. The maid folded her arms. I won, she said finally. You wanted towers. I wanted sons. And I won. The words cut him deep, but at the same time they lifted something heavy off her shoulders. She had carried the truth alone for years. Now it was in the open. Now it was his burden too. For the first time, the CEO bowed his head, not to investors, not to rivals, but to her, the maid, the mother, the woman he had once overlooked, but who had carried his legacy on her back without asking for a dime. The reversal was complete. The apartment was still, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. The night outside hummed with the noise of New York. Cars honking down Flatbush Avenue, the echo of footsteps in the stairwell, a train groaning somewhere underground, but none of it reached inside this small room. Here, silence lived, heavy, sharp, unshakable. The man who had once towered over Manhattan boardrooms sat hunched at a wobbly kitchen table. His suit, cut from the finest cloth, sagged on his shoulders. His hands, once used to gripping pens that signed away millions, now shook against wood scarred by crayons and toy wheels. His chest rose and fell too fast. His eyes burned, not with the fire of pride, but with a guilt he could not swallow. Across from him stood the maid, no longer the quiet servant who swept through his penthouse unnoticed. Her shoulders were straight, her eyes unblinking. She had fought battles he had never seen, battles on buses at dawn, battles with rent due and wallets empty, battles fought in the quiet of long nights when 3 small boys cried out for comfort. She had carried the truth alone, and she was not afraid of him now. The children, 3 little reflections of the man at the table, sat close to one another. They whispered and giggled, then fell silent, sensing the weight around them. They did not know the full story, but they felt it. Children always feel. They felt their mother's strength. They felt the stranger's sorrow. And deep inside, they felt the strange pull of blood. The CEO looked at them, his throat tight. The faces staring back were his. Every curve, every sharp line, every stubborn tilt of the head. His legacy sat 3 feet away. Yet he had not earned even the smallest place in their lives. He lowered his face into his hands. "I don't deserve them," he whispered. The words cracked, spilling out like broken glass. The maid's voice came steady, unwavering. "No, you don't. Not yet." She paused, her eyes softening only a little. "But it isn't about what you deserve. It's about what they need." The children shifted in their chairs. One fiddled with a toy car, rolling it back and forth against the table's edge. Another pressed a crayon hard into paper, leaving bold lines of green. The third simply stared at the man, his head tilted, curious. The CEO swallowed hard. He looked up, his voice trembling. "Can I try?" The maid didn't answer quickly. Her silence was long, sharp, deliberate. It forced him to wait. It forced him to feel the weight of his own question. Then she turned, her eyes resting on her son's. "It isn't my choice," she said softly. "It's theirs." The boys blinked, their young faces puzzled. They didn't understand everything. But they understood this. Their mother was asking them something important, something that mattered. For a moment, they looked at one another. The oldest leaned back, thoughtful. The middle one chewed his lip. The youngest, clutching the little blue car, slowly pushed it across the table toward the man in the suit. The CEO froze. His breath caught. He stared at the toy rolling toward him, bumping against his hand. His chest tightened so hard he thought it might break. He touched it carefully, his fingers trembling. Such a small thing. A plastic car worth a few dollars. Yet in that moment, it felt like forgiveness. It felt like hope. Tears blurred his vision. He blinked them back, but one slipped free, rolling down his cheek. He didn't wipe it away. He let it fall. The maid saw it. Her face softened more now, but her voice stayed strong. "This isn't about you anymore. It never was. It's about them. If you want to stay, then stay for them. Not for pride, not for control, for them." He nodded slowly. For once he didn't speak. For once he didn't argue. He only nodded. The boys leaned closer, still studying him. They didn't smile, not yet. They didn't call him Daddy. They didn't run into his arms, but they didn't turn away either. They watched. They waited. And in their waiting, they left him a chance. The apartment walls held the moment, heavy and fragile at the same time. She had carried the truth alone. He carried the guilt now, and the children, innocent, unscarred, carried the future. The question that remained was not hers to answer, not his to answer, but ours. Would you forgive him, or should silence remain his punishment forever? The night moved on. Outside, the city never stopped. Lights blinked, traffic snarled, people hurried down streets that didn't care about the stories behind closed doors. But here, in this tiny apartment, a story had unfolded that money couldn't buy, that power couldn't erase. A story about pride, sacrifice, silence, and truth. The CEO had spent years ruling a city, yet in the end, it wasn't the city that judged him. It was 3 children, and 1 mother. If you believe every hidden truth deserves to be revealed, then subscribe now, because the next story might be the one no one else dares to tell. And if you refuse, then speak in the comments. Tell us why. Because silence, the silence that allowed him to walk away, the silence that forced her to carry this weight alone, is how injustice wins. Don't stay silent. Not here. Not now.